All right, what are the top 6 mid-size sport utility vehicles out there here at the end of 2022? Well, today I'm going to tell you what my opinions are. So welcome back to All Cars Y'all. I am John, and this is one of the largest, most heavily contested, with the most competition markets we have out there. And the fact is there's a lot of really good options. This is going to be my opinions. I always believe that make a list. If this is the market for you, go drive several, because no video on YouTube is ever going to tell you what speaks to you, what really works for you and for your family. So take this as a guideline. These are organized not exactly like I would choose them, but kind of in the order of how I would recommend them. And so let's get into it. I'm doing 6 because there's so many good ones. I could do 10. I'm going to do the top 6 and then give you my honorable mentions at the end. Also, these are not luxury ones, and it may be 2-row, maybe 3-row SUVs. It's just kind of what's on the market because there's just so many options out there. Number 6 for me is the Ford Explorer. Now, we like the Explorer. We have a previous generation Explorer, and my wife loves her Explorer. I have mixed feelings about it. I've done a whole video, a review of the Explorer, and it feels like an old platform that's kind of stretched and pulled, but kept up to date with features, and it rides good on the interstate, for example. When they came out with the new Explorer, I really expected it to be revolutionary and leap to the front of the pack, but it didn't. The new Explorer is a really solid option. I really like the exterior styling. I really like the style of the interior. It's extremely comfortable. It's competitive in almost every way, and I think it's still selling pretty well. But it does feel slightly unfinished to me. Like Ford got it to a place where they're like, it's good enough. It's going to sell. They didn't really sweat the details in some ways. And one of the things about the interior I didn't like was it had a lot of piano black plastic in it. That's going to smudge a lot. It just, I don't know. I tend to think there's some better options out there. However, I will say that if we had to replace my wife's, she would probably get one of these because she truly loves hers so much. And that leaves us with number 5, which I'm going to say is the Chevy Traverse. Now, personally, I would choose this over the Explorer. I like the exterior styling. I really like the interior styling. I like almost everything about it, actually, and I think it offers a really good value for the money. It is getting maybe a little bit long in the tooth, and yes, if you cross-shop between several different things, the quality of the interior on the Chevy doesn't quite match up with the best out there. And because it is a Chevy, I do always get on these videos comments where people are like, it's a piece of junk. I don't know if that's really true or not, but do your research. Me personally, this car really speaks to me. I like it a lot. Number 4, the Toyota Highlander. Now this one is probably going to be a little contentious with people wondering why it's not higher, and it is because this is personal. I don't like it, honestly, and we have a very specific reason for it. On the overall, it looks, the exterior styling honestly looks like it's trying too hard. The first generation Highlander, when it came out, I loved it, unequivocally loved it. The interior doesn't quite work for me. It's got competitive power, it's competitively priced, and of course it's got that Toyota name on it. So for many people, this is going to be the number 1 choice and maybe the only thing they actually look at. But when we were shopping for that Explorer I was talking about, we went and looked at a Highlander. I thought this would be the answer for my wife to address a lot of her concerns about what features were available and having that nameplate, having that trust in Toyota and their reliability. When we got in the Highlander, ooh, it was an ooh kind of moment. It felt cheaper to us than the price would indicate, especially the seats. So please drive it for yourself. It's a competitive option, and again, it may be number 1 for you, but for us, it only makes this list for me because of the Toyota nameplate, truly. That leaves us with the next one being the Honda Pilot. Now, if you've been a fan of my channel before, you know that I am a Honda fan. I have that Honda Accord sitting out there. I've had several Hondas. My wife had a Honda before her Explorer we keep talking about, and we don't like the Pilot. Now, they made some changes to it. They've updated the styling, and whereas the Highlander was almost trying too hard, the Pilot before really wasn't trying hard enough. It didn't do a great job not looking like an SUV minivan, because it basically is. But worse than that, it didn't ride terribly well. And I've driven more than one, and they all rode kind of the same. So the styling's been updated. The interior is certainly competitive with anything else out there, although not particularly class leading overall. It's just a solid option from Honda. But for us, when we drove it, it didn't feel particularly nimble. It also felt kind of light in the rear end, so at higher speeds, it actually was uncomfortable, whereas most of these vehicles feel very planted on the road. It was a really, really disappointing option. But as with all of them, check it out for yourself. You may love it. It's a good seller, and I think it's a solid option for most people. But for us, there was just something off about it, if you know what I mean. Next up, the Nissan Pathfinder. Now, this is a little surprising to be up here at number 2 because, well, the previous one was pretty miserable. It was actually an okay performer. It was like a generic SUV with all of the life, all of the passion sucked out of it. The exterior styling was really no more exciting than melting margarine. The interior, it looked like they had no sense of style. They just, well, here, just make it cheap plastic. And it actually performed okay, but it was so incredibly dull. Well, they've made a lot of changes, a very heavy revision to it, and the new one is much better. I think it looks great inside. I think it looks great outside. I think it's a very, very solid performer. I don't think many people put this on their list, however, because of the previous generation. It lost so much momentum that people just kind of remember it being kind of ooky, and where the Pilot or the Highlander would be a better choice. I do think that the revisions that Nissan has made, particularly in the style, the quality of the materials inside, I think it's kind of flipped the script on them. I think that that one is a better choice for most people, and one that I would be more proud to drive than, say, that Pilot. And that leaves me with number 1, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to cheat here just a little bit because I'm actually putting 2 at number 1, and it is the Kia Telluride and the Hyundai Palisade. They're based on the same platform, and I want to lump them together because otherwise they would take number 1 and number 2 in this list. And I got to admit, everything else I've talked about so far, these two are number 1 or number 2, 1A, right? And it's not really close. It's really not. These two are by far the best ones out there, period. And it's not close. Now, I think that they each have a distinctive flavor. Hyundai Group has done a great job of taking basically the same car, the same platform, individual styling, individual interiors, and making them feel much different. The Telluride's a little more sporty, tends to rank higher for most people. The Palisade is a little more on the luxury side. There's some option differences between them. But I'll be honest with you, it's got competitive power, it looks good, they ride good, they've got a really good use of space, they're super comfortable. More than once, I have had people favorably compare specifically the Telluride to a Range Rover. And that's saying something. I'm not making that comparison exactly, I just think there's too much of a gap there. But it's really, really good. Now, none of these I've talked about. I'm not doing off-road ability. I'm not doing body on frame, solid axle, true four-wheel drive abilities. I'm really looking at these as the replacement for a minivan. You want something with more style, and most people are just getting SUVs. And I gotta say, the Kia and the Hyundai here really kind of nail it right now. They are the ones to beat. Next up, that brings us to the honorable mentions. Now, there are a lot of options out there, and I'm going to cover these pretty quickly for us. And the first one's going to be that Subaru Ascent. Now, this is the largest SUV Subaru has made, and it really made a splash. My wife really likes the style of them, but I've got to be honest with you, this one just strikes a very sour note for me. While things like the Forester and the Outback really speak to me, but they're just a little too boring. I understand why people love them and have a very passionate relationship with them. But the Subaru is one of those ones I strongly encourage you, before you get too excited about it, go drive it. The exterior styling is okay, but the inside, although it's the biggest they've done, it's not that big. It's really barely competitive with everything else out there. And some of the ergonomics inside are really weird, really funky, like the position of door locks or window switches and just things like that. It feels very disjointed to me. It doesn't feel like a holistic car that was put together. So I mention it because it might be right for you, especially if you live in those snowy climates and you're a fan of Subarus and you just want a bigger one, but overall, doesn't really work for me. Next up, I'm going to kind of lump together the Buick and the GMC. Now, Buick is not quite premium, not quite Acura level. It's still based on the Chevy Traverse platform. It is much nicer. I'll admit this car really speaks to me, but it is a price above many of the other options. It's in this weird spot versus price versus the exterior styling versus the interior quality of the materials. Is it really there, or would you just rather stretch into something a little bit nicer? Now, the Acadia is almost the exact same description, except the Acadia is much more rugged looking. I love the exterior styling on this. I love the interior, although that quality materials are still probably not where the Kia is, for example. But it is based on a shortened version of the Chevy Traverse. And it really speaks to me. I know I keep saying that because this is a very competitive market where a lot of cars can work for you, but the Acadia really does it for me. There's not much that would make it not be number one for me, but one of the problems is the price. GMC is a slightly more premium brand, the way General Motors has got their different brands staggered. I think the Traverse is making my list because I think it's a better value. The GMC is better style, but for the price, once you get some equipment in there, I'm not sure it's worth the extra money. I love it. Boy, I have seriously thought about these just like I've thought about the Terrain in the compact realm, but I don't know if I'd pull the trigger on it just because of the price versus what else you can get. Next up, the VW. You know what? I know people who have them. I've driven them. They're very good. If that's what you're looking for, it's a very good SUV. Volkswagen did an excellent job of doing this SUV. They just did it in a boring way. The exterior styling, at least it doesn't look rounded off. It looks a little more tailored. It looks a little more creased. I kind of like that, but it doesn't end up looking upscale. It just looks okay. Pricing is fine. Power's okay, interior is comfortable, but all feels just a little downgraded to me. And so you end up again with this value question of, with what you're getting, is it really worth it? And then you add in VW, and was it really going to be that reliable down the road? People swear by VWs and that they will last forever. I'm not necessarily one of those, although the one I had was exceptional. This one just doesn't quite do it for me. I think there's more stylish options out there. I think there's more options out there that offer a better value for the money. But the people I know who've bought these have had excellent service from it, and they truly love it. Truly love them. It brings out a passion that people don't tend to have, say, with the Honda and the Toyota and the Nissan options. And the last ones I'm going to mention here are the Dodge Durango and the Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I mention them for different reasons. The Durango is pretty long in the tooth, pretty old, but a true four-wheel drive. It is a very good performer. In spite of its age, Dodge has really kept it up to date, certainly on the infotainment, certainly in the engines, everything else. It is a good performer and can rate very highly. However, it is more of a real off-roader. This would compare more with the Toyota 4Runner than one of these other car-based sport utilities. I wanted to mention it so that I had something to say about Dodge, but it doesn't really fit in with anything else. If you're looking for this, it's going to give you better options in terms of power and towing, for example, but it doesn't really fit in with this group. And the Grand Cherokee is kind of the same thing, except it's more luxury. It's a beautiful car in person. It is absolutely stunning, and because of that, it doesn't really compete with these more mainstream, middle-of-the-road markets. It still has real off-road ability, but it's really closer to a luxury vehicle now. Probably has been for a long time, but I wanted to mention it so that you didn't think I'd forgotten about it. So that kind of sums it up. That's my quick thoughts on the top 6 midsize SUVs. If you have any questions, let me know below. If I missed your favorite, you disagree with my order, let me know, but I appreciate you being here.